Hi, this is the House of PMO. We're doing a live stream today for the new qualification. Before we get into that, I'd just like to say thanks very much for joining us. If you're joining us either on LinkedIn or through the actual session itself, you'll be able to ask us any questions. You can be able to pop those into your chat and we'll be able to pick those up as we go along. But hopefully we'll give you a really good overview today, and of course you can get in touch with us directly at the House of PMO, which is houseofpmo.com. Before we get going, for those of you that have seen that we're doing this session but are not quite sure about House of PMO, just a really brief background. I mean, obviously you can go and have a look at the website and find out a lot more about us, but we are a professional body for people that are working within PMO, and we've been going for a number of years, but it's only recently I think it's probably last 15 months or so, we moved over to a new brand which is House of PMO, and it all kind of kicked off from more recently because of the launch of the PMO competency framework, which is something that we've been working on for a number of years. Many people have already known us as PMO Flash Mob, but we became a professional body for PMO people, based on the fact that we have been working together over a number of years with my co-founder and colleague Eileen. Eileen, do you want to tell everybody a little bit about you?
Okay, so my name is Eileen Roden. I did actually a long time ago start off in IT, but ended up kind of going through HR into a PMO. And as I always say, I thought I died and gone into heaven. I spent several years working in a PMO, multiple PMOs before moving to the dark side and become a trainer and consultant, helping lots of other organisations. Met Lindsay,
yes,
20 years ago or so, at an event, and then ended up going from just attending events to organising the events, and that's where we started from as well.
Yeah, so we come from a background of getting PMO people together, and more recently the House of PMO, as says, become a membership-based business which allows any individual that's working within PMO that are interested in developing themselves in their own careers to come along and to be members. We've also got corporate members as well. Some of the things that we've become known for over the last I think it's 8 years now is doing the PMO conference, which we continue to do. We've got through the pandemic, thank goodness, and now back to doing our main conferences in June in London, but also adding Edinburgh this year as well, which we'll continue to do going forward. So for us, it's all about bringing people together that they're working in PMO but just really want to do the best they can do in their careers. So today, that's a little bit. Just you'll be able to obviously find out a lot more. There's a lot of stuff on the website. You can go and have a look at that. So from the House of PMO, as I said, we kind of changed the name because we had been working on this project called a PMO competency framework. So many moons ago, people had always said to us that there's a project management competency frameworks out there, there's stuff for program managers, portfolio managers, but actually there was never anything for PMO. And one of the reasons why is that people said that it couldn't be done. And it took us 3 years to prove them wrong, but actually could be done. And that's basically became available last February, and it's been selling in going great guns all over the world.
Proverbial hotcakes.
Yes, all over the world, which is brilliant to see. But one of the things that the competency framework then allowed us to do is think about qualifications. So any professional body needs to look at and focus around things like the standards. The competency framework allowed us to start to move into that space. And the other thing that professional bodies do is look at qualifications. So the director level qualification is actually is one of 4. Now what you'll see, if you're not already familiar with the competency framework, within it what we've obviously got is the competencies to be able to do jobs well, but it's based on 4 different role profiles, which are admin, analyst, manager and director. So you can see that we've obviously done qualifications. There's 4 of them, and AHO, they're all related to the role profiles that you will find in the competency framework. But what it allowed us to then do is, when it came to thinking about qualifications, Eileen and I were very clear that we wanted something that was going to be very much about helping people to sort of practical side of the job. So it's not necessarily, of course there's some theory stuff in there, but it is very much about the practicalities of doing the role. So we can see that the latest one and the last one of this suite, the Essentials range, and it's called Essentials for what reason, Eileen?
Well, it's really because a lot of the is about understanding what's required of the role. And interestingly, when we talk about those kind of 4 different roles, having an understanding of those 4 roles and the differentiators between them actually drew an awful lot of discussion. And what came out of that was actually preparing to move into those roles. So very much kind of entry level, coming in as a PMO administrator, but also in terms of, well, if I want to go into a PMO analyst role, or I want to go into a PMO manager role, what is it I actually need to know and understand? What's involved with that role? What are the competencies I'm going to have to develop to actually perform well in that role? So all of these certifications are all about the essentials for moving into that role. And so this final one that we've got to eventually is the essentials for the PMO directors. And the PMO director role is probably one of the more interesting roles, because a lot of people said to us, well, actually, I'm not sure that role exists, but we've proved them wrong again, because they do. People get employed in that role, and we've actually had an event where we had a PMO director actually kind of come and speak to us. And the PMO director, and we have to say, this is how we've described them in the competency framework, because they're the most commonly used in industry, but we still find that the PMO director might be somebody who's called a PMO manager, but is the PMO manager in the organisation. So it's not just a manager of a particular PMO office, but is the PMO manager and looks after the whole of the PMO. So we've got on the screen there just a kind of a high-level description of what is the PMO director essentially. As I said, this top-level PMO job, which is those people who have overall accountability for determining, well, what PMOs are going to be across the organisation, what services do the PMO actually going to provide. And so that's the purpose of this qualification, is to get people prepared for that. And underpinning that, you'll see that we've got some of the key responsibilities there that are associated with this role. So about really developing a mission and vision for the PMO that is aligned to the mission and vision for the organisation. Yes, they will make sure that we've got all the governance and insights in place across all of the initiatives that sit at portfolio level. And they work with the organisation to build delivery capability. So whether that be developing the project and programme management capability, building up the infrastructure that sits around the delivery of projects and programmes, obviously setting up the PMO, but also as well working with the organisation to create the right culture and governance beyond the immediate project. So again, looking at the governance structure for the role of the sponsor, the approvals group, the portfolio management group. So definitely working at that level in the organisation. So it's been really interesting, actually, as we've kind of gone through this, we've met more and more directors who perhaps hadn't kind of necessarily seen themselves in that position, or actually didn't feel as though they had any outlet to kind of have a conversation with about the role that they're doing and how that sat with the other roles that were involved in PMO in the organisation.
So let's have a look at who this qualification is actually aimed at. As Eileen has said, it's because it's the essentials. It's about getting people ready, to come into this role. But actually, it is still relevant to people who have been doing the role. We'll talk a little bit about that further on. But so who it's for is obviously PMO directors, but we know that they come with different titles. So it could be like heads of projects, or portfolio director, or it could be any of those kind of terms. But here's just a selection of them as to who this particular qualification is for.
Yes, and I think that is that final paragraph really that to me really broadens it out to as it needs to be, because it's anybody that has a role for that overall PMO design across the organisation. And we deliberately kind of say new or aspiring. So for people who kind of just gone into that role and are really kind of saying, well, actually, I don't just want to think about what this organisation thinks it is. I actually want to get an understanding of what the role can be and the breadth and the depth of what can be included. And for those people who are perhaps sitting as a PMO manager, or maybe sitting as a project or a program manager, or even what we found, people who've sat in the business who've been a sponsor for some large programs, understand how projects and programs can contribute to the organisation, actually are coming in at that PMO director role to say, well, actually, I've been an operational manager. Yeah. I know what the business needs. I might not be a detailed project manager or have ever delivered a project, but I actually know how the setup would work. And I'll work with specialists to make sure the projects are being delivered. So again, for those individuals who perhaps don't want to have all of that kind of detailed experience of working in detail in projects and program managers, this is a great kind of catch up to say, well, actually, this is where the focus of the PMO director role is.
Do you think that, just throwing in a question, but it doesn't really matter what size your organisation is to be a PMO director?
Oh no, absolutely. But that's been a really kind of fascinating, as we've kind of rolled out the other 3 certifications. We get a lot of people who, even at the administrator course or the analyst course, to say, well, actually, I'm expected to design the PMO, what services I provide. Well, so is that a manager? So is there any other PMOs? No, we're doing everything. So it's really interesting that even in a really small organisation, some of those aspects of a PMO design actually can sit with somebody who doesn't have the job of a PMO director. And it's really interesting in terms of, and again, some of the really good discussions we have when we've been talking about kind of the course material is, well, actually, who should have this job as a PMO director? So if you think you've got it, but actually you're not sure you have the authority, again, some of the things we'll talk about on the course is not just kind of what's expected of your role, but essentially what authority the organisation needs to give you in order for you to be able to do that role effectively. And so, kind of coming out of the courses, the individuals who attend, have a better picture of what can be involved, but often go away with a renewed ability to be able to have those conversations with the organisation to say, you've appointed me in this role in order to make the best of it. This is what we need in terms of kind of to make that happen from an authority perspective, and actually then start thinking about how to do that role in the organisation.
I mean, obviously, with any kind of qualifications, or certainly at this particular level, there's always going to be prerequisites. So you can see there on the screen, these are the prerequisites. Essentially, with prerequisites for this, this qualification is being developed by House of PMO, but it's accredited by APMG International. Yes. And like any qualification, when it comes to prerequisites, sometimes they're quite loose, but actually these are, you have to be able to demonstrate, don't you, in order to be able to sit the exam.
And I think there's this for a number of reasons. Certainly from the ATO's perspective, when the training providers are providing the training, it becomes quite difficult if you're trying to talk at one particular level and you've got somebody on the course who's perhaps not had, who doesn't have the prerequisites, and then it becomes really difficult to kind of keep the conversation at the right level, because you've got to keep dipping down to try and kind of bring them up. But also from a delegate perspective, yes, what you want to do is you want to go on the Essentials of PMO Director course and meet other people who are in a similar role to you. So the APM group are very firm about the prerequisites, and any of the training providers who sign up to deliver these courses will be required to check that you have those prerequisites. So there is a chance. We do recognize, if you've come up through kind of PMO, then essentially you might have done your Essentials for PMO Managers, or you will have a practitioner certificate in, kind of any real kind of project program management discipline. We've always said it's Catholic. It covers, kind of all APM, PMI, Agile, the whole kind of suite. Or if you've worked within a PMO, 3 years experience of working with a PMO environment. So that could be 3 years working on a big program as a sponsor would get you through that prerequisite. So have the conversation, but it just means that the people who are attending on the course are going to be people who are doing a similar role, so the conversation is at the right level, and also, to be fair, to give you the best chance of passing the exam when it comes to doing the exam.
Let's have a look at the a little bit more about the course and you know, the examination elements to it. So it's a 2-day course.
Yes, we were very conscious. So some of the other courses, the admin course is 3 days. She says, trying to remember these off the top of my head. Admin course is 3 days, analyst course 5 days, managers course 3 days. And we said actually for the directors course, we recognise that being out of the office for any period of time can be quite difficult. So we did want to kind of keep that down to the 2 days, which again goes back to the fact it's an essentials course. We can't cover absolutely everything in that, so it's the essentials course, so 2 days. But we do have an exam that needs to be completed. So it's an hour exam where there's 50 questions, and it is multiple choice, but don't let anybody kid you that multiple choice can be relatively straightforward, because the questions that have been set and been through lots of rigorous kind of quality checks are really about kind of testing your ability to understand the role and how the competencies are applied to that role, to get to check that you've got a real understanding about what's involved in undertaking that role. So some of the multiple choice questions are, have got quite a bit in them before you get to make your choice.
Yeah, absolutely. So there you go. So all of the essentials suite of courses have the same core text behind them, don't they?
Yeah,
so
they do.
These are the three books, which I'm quite proudly say that all of those cost less than
a single Axelos manual.
Yes. So it's not extortionate, but I think at this level, what you're seeing there on screen right now is is obviously what's been that forms we'd already talked about the competency framework, of course, but also the services, and then also praxis. Can you tell us a little bit more about why they're underpinning this?
So it was quite interesting when we were pulling the course materials together about what needed to go in from a theory perspective in order to be able to talk about the practical stuff. So you do need some theory to get to the practical application. So the competency framework gives us the role description and the specific competencies required for each role. The service catalogue, which is produced and written by Stuart Dixon, that really is the most comprehensive catalogue out there of things that PMOs do. So again, looking at kind of what you need to have in terms of being competent comes from the competency framework. What the types of things that you can do comes from the service catalogue. But we also needed some project and program management theory to dip into. And the great thing about the praxis framework, and we do also use the website www.praxisframework.org. We also use the website because that is free to use as long as it's referenced.
Yeah,
get that in.
Yeah.
So what we cover off, so if there's kind of project and program management theory, we dip into praxis. If we want to know what PMOs do, we look in the service catalogue, and if we want to know what the PMO person needs to be equipped with, we use the service catalogue.
Okay.
Sorry, the competency framework.
Okay, so there's the core text.
I do want to say that even though Lindsay says they're cheaper to buy than all of the any Axelos manual, which is true, the way the course materials and what we've done for the training providers is that actually the course text, that is the core materials that have been provided, contain all of the information in. So because people can get quite alarmed when you see those 3 books, there's an awful lot, and you don't obviously have to learn everything in all of those 3 books because we use the same core text, so it's bits of each book, and so we have extracted that and put that in the course materials. So you'll get the training providers will provide you with kind of set of slides and some notes, and that is everything you need in order to be able to be successful in the exam. But we would still recommend actually having them on your bookshelf because they're great reference manuals.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's get into a little bit more detail then about what people can expect in terms of the course content. There's top 3 levels, really.
Yes. So we spent some time talking about the context. Just again, as we went through the competency framework, the challenges is that every PMO can be completely different. So we spend a bit of time talking about the kind of the context and kind of the different types of PMO. We cover off the roles, and then we go into some detail in the competency. So if we look at kind of a little bit more detail of what that actually kind of involves, when we talk about the context, we talk about kind of the organisation structure, the kind of the scope of any kind of PMO, and particularly, and this is where the really kind of the fun bit of the course is, because we talk about the real situations of the delegates who are on the course. So the mission, the vision, the strategy. We talk about the integrated PMO model. So again, many organizations now don't just have a single PMO, they have multiple PMOs across the organization. And again, it's about thinking about, well, what does that look like? What are the pros and cons of the different kind of models that are out there? When should we get a new one? And every organization can actually kind of design their own, but actually we have some kind of conversations about what that looks like. And then we also talk about how we develop maturity of project and program management and the PMO. So that's a kind of really good kind of just getting our head in the right space of being, kind of what our organization needs from a PMO. And then we go onto the roles, and we do, just for clarity, cover off details of each of the 4 roles, because just understanding kind of where the director would sit with the manager, where the manager sits with the analyst, what those interactions. So we cover off all of the 4 roles at a high level, and then we go into some detail around the PMO director role. And to me, as you know, when we went to the competency framework, yes, we talk about knowledge and skills, but actually what is absolutely key is the behaviours. And so we discuss how the PMO director behaves contributes to the success and particularly the credibility of the PMO, and therefore kind of how valuable it is to the organisation. Yeah. And then finally, when we've covered that off, we walk through the specific competencies that are relevant to the PMO director. Now, within the competency framework, there's about 26 competencies. The argument is that we could have covered all of them. Yeah. In the role profiles, we always said we would say 5 to 8 would be key for that particular role. And so we've picked off the kind of the 5 key ones that are important, we believe, at the PMO director. Interestingly, and we were prepared for this, we are still questioned P3M delivery support. What on earth is a PMO director doing with delivery support? Surely that's an administrative role. And actually, whatever role you do within a PMO, you're going to be doing some delivery support. Now, delivery support at director level might be presenting the kind of the portfolio level review and risks at the portfolio level. It's still, absolute support. So that becomes kind of really important. And then we pick off 4 of what we call the enabling competencies from the competency framework, which are about setting up the right environment and the right infrastructure in order for projects and programs to run effectively. So those are the kind of the 4 we put up there: capacity management, capability development, governance framework, and assurance. Yeah.
And just for anybody who wants to know more detail, and there's a lot more detail, if you head over to the House of PMO website, houseofpmo.com, you'll see on the front page there's a qualifications. You'll just need to navigate to the PMO director one, and so full syllabus is there. So essentially that's what you get from me. It comes from APMG. Because it's the way that syllabuses work, I'm sure I'll give you the more technical answers, but ultimately whatever is covered in that syllabus you can expect to see in the training course, which then aligns to the exam. So there's a lot more detail in there. They had a question about pricing and how pricing works. So the way that the whole structure is around qualification, certainly in project management over the last decades or so, House of PMO have created the qualifications, and they are certified by APMG International. So the House of PMO does not deliver training courses. So we're the professional body. APMG are the ones that do the examinations. And it's essentially any training organisation that would like to add this training course to their portfolio, they need to be audited and assessed by APMG in order to be able to do that. So in terms of when it comes to pricing, it's up to the training organisations to set their kind of pricing. So I think we can kind of expect for this level of role around a 2-day course. Reasonably,
anywhere between, I would suggest it's going to be anywhere between £1,000 and £1,500 typically. I would expect for the training providers to set that up. But as I say, we don't provide
retail.
Well, as I say, we don't set that at all. We've set the standard. We've created the materials, we've created the exams, and it's up to the training providers to take that and essentially be market driven in terms of what the market will be. But when you look at the kind of people who will be delivering this training, in terms of their experience and the type of people who will be some of the conversations, being able to lead those conversations, that's the but
ultimately, so the 2-day course gives you some idea that that it's around pricing. Okay, so one of the things that of course, just to think, why have we done the PMO director one? Because it's, as you said, many people, probably working more at the PMO manager level than they do director. So there are a number of different reasons why, from listening to all the things that we've been doing over the last 20 years or so, these are some of the things that has driven us to, to keep going up to that more senior level. Because you think about it, in the marketplace, there's probably a lot of administration and analyst people out there, so that's probably where you're going to get a lot more people. But from the manager and the director level, and certainly at the director level, there's a number of different reasons, and the classic one is that you don't know what you don't know.
I know we still meet individuals who have been given a role that looks and feels a bit like the PMO director role, but have not necessarily met with anybody or talked to anybody about what that role actually means. And so their understanding, their expectation of that role is very much limited by their own knowledge. So again, having the standard that comes from the competency framework allows them to understand actually what that role means perhaps in the industry rather than just in their particular organization. And it's been fascinating actually kind of having and talking to people who are at that level and doing that role, just starting to be able to put their arms around what's actually included.
And the other thing is that but obviously when you're working certainly at that level, but it's unlikely that you're going to have many people that you can call on within your organization.
Well, it's likely to be
mentoring you or support or anything like that. It's probably just you, which means that yes, over the years there has been a lot of people saying that there's nothing for me to be able to do. I can go off and do some kind of project management, program management, portfolio management stuff, but actually there's nothing around specifically around this, the PMOs, but certainly around the enabling competencies, which are all about building the ecosystems and the integrated models and, things that are not covered in project, program and portfolio management type courses.
But because typically in project and program management courses, you're learning how to do risk management, you're learning, kind of how best to use a tool, but nobody's telling you, well, how do you set risk management up in an organization? How do you kind of best put that kind of tool in place? How do you build up the overall kind of skills and capability of your project management faculty, essentially? So it's really a kind of a different perspective that you might glean some information from your experience, you might have some views from your experience, but not necessarily kind of recognize how that's done in a more kind of formal or structured process.
I think one of the things that we frequently get requests into the House of PMO is from people that have been given the opportunity to set up a PMO or to run one and have never done it before. And actually the main questions we get is, where can I go to understand, what's the standard kind of approach to this kind of stuff? What are some of the steps that you might take to be able to do that? Which is where we obviously point them at, things like, well, first of all, I think you kind of need to understand what the role's about, because it's missing a lot of the time, which means that you tend to find, and certainly hear stories about the different approaches that people take to setting up PMOs. You know, that's just purely around the setup. Obviously, it's very different when it comes to managing one as well. And it's this lack of consistency anyway. Across the industry, which continues to baffle people anyway about their perception of PMO.
And I think at the director level, the really interesting bit here is that you may end up inheriting a situation where you've got a number of PMOs in the organisation who are all doing very different things. And again, you know, that kind of that last point on there in terms of create consistency across the PMOs, if you start kind of putting in some structure about recognising the different roles of administrator, analyst and manager and have them kind of more clearly defined, then everybody can see how that all fits together. And at the director level, we're saying it's not just how the roles fit together, but it's how all of the individual PMOs fit together. So you're putting together a kind of a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle in terms of how best the whole of the PMO function can support the organisation.
I think the bottom line as well is that actually for a lot of people that have been working at kind of manager director level for a while, there is still obviously that the ability to show externally, maybe through recruitment and things like that, that you have been operating at that role. But you know, that's obviously a classic one, which many people, you know, choose qualifications to kind of show that that's the kind of thing they've been doing, which kind of brings us to the end of the session, because you know, with all of the qualifications that you get from APMG, and is the seems to be the modern way at the moment, you do get that kind of digital badge thing, and
which we're looking forward to seeing all over LinkedIn. To be fair, we've because the previous three have been out, we've already started to kind of see those, but we're hoping now the four are out. Training providers are going to really kind of latch onto these and start providing them out to their delegates.
Yeah. So that's the essentials for PMO directors. And as I said, you can visit the website houseofpmo.com and take a look at the qualifications page. You'll see all of them are there. You'll see the detailed syllabus is probably the one that you want to dip into, which is, you know, we wouldn't put it on a session like this, but you can certainly go and have a look at that. You can drop us a line, you can get in touch if you're interested, want to know more, want to see which kind of training providers are going to be offering this course. Please do get in touch. More than happy and would love to hear from you. But that's it for now. I think one of the things that we'll be planning on doing at the House of PMO is dipping into a little bit more into detail in terms of the PMO director. And as we said, become a member, you get access to all the content that we have in the library. A lot of it is aimed at the manager and director level. So there's certainly stuff there for you to carry on your kind of more informal development. And we hope that if you're operating at that manager and director level, you'll consider getting more involved with the House of PMO. We need you. We need the leaders that are in the field today to help us move the professional, which is what the House of PMO is all about. So please do take a look at us. Consider becoming a member, and we'd love to see you at the next session.
Excellent.
Take care for now. Thank you.